when you flip on the television and tune into national politics, I mean, it almost always looks like this permanent, screaming traffic jam.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You see the floor fights, the partisan grandstanding, and you walk away with this sinking feeling that the federal government is just entirely frozen.
Yeah, it feels like nothing gets done.
But if you actually look at the raw data specifically, this towering stack of bills and the congressional record from June 25, 2026, sitting right here in front of us, it tells a completely different story.
A very different story, yeah.
It looks to me like gridlock is just a myth created by cable news because behind the scenes, this legislative machinery is quietly churning out an absolutely massive amount of complex work.
It really is a myth of visibility. I mean, the cameras are permanently pointed at the chaos, but the actual engine room of Congress is the committee system.
Right.
And that is where the grinding, deeply technical work of governing happens daily.
And that engine room is exactly what we are exploring today. Welcome to this special Congress in Context deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to take these massive, dense stacks of recent congressional sources and, extract the vital insights. We want to explain not just what your representatives are doing, but how these policies actually work under the hood so you can stay perfectly informed.
Because there is a lot going on under the hood.
Exactly. And just a quick housekeeping note before we get into the heavy machinery. This is a completely independent, ad-free civic education project.
Yep.
We don't take corporate sponsors, so if you want to help keep our production infrastructure running, you can find a Buy Me a Coffee link right in your app's show notes.
It really helps us out.
Okay, let's unpack this. It is easy to look at the news and think Congress is entirely gridlocked. But looking at the stack of bills, it seems like they're quietly doing a ton of work. Is the gridlock just a total illusion?
Which brings us back to that engine room I mentioned. If you want proof that the gears are actually turning, look at H.R. 2478.
The Financial Exploitation Prevention Act, right?
Yes, the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act of 2025.
I flagged that one immediately because, well, the vibe of the current political climate tells you nobody agrees on anything. Yet this bill passed the House with 414 members voting yes.
And only 2 voting no.
Which is just wild.
It is a stunning margin, and the mechanics of the bill are highly practical. It gives mutual funds and investment companies a specific legal safe harbor.
Like a way to pause things.
Exactly. It lets them delay the redemption of securities if they suspect financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult.
Like an elderly person being coerced into liquidating their retirement account.
Right. It provides a structural pause button for financial institutions so they can investigate fraud without violating their fiduciary duty to execute trades promptly.
So we have overwhelming bipartisan consensus protecting seniors, but the committees are also moving aggressively to regulate the future.
Oh, definitely.
Looking at the output from the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, they are really trying to tackle artificial intelligence, and they are doing it with serious financial firepower.
They're attempting to buy structural global dominance, basically. We are looking at H.R. 2385, which establishes the National AI Research Initiative.
And that's a lot of money, right?
It authorizes $4 billion in annual funding for 5 years.
Wow.
And they aren't just sprinkling grants around. This is targeted money for workforce development, physical computing infrastructure, and foundational research.
Basically to ensure the United States doesn't lose the technological arms race.
Exactly.
But they are also trying to regulate the models that already exist, which brings us to H.R. 6461.
The RE-AI Models Act.
Right. It directs the National Institute of Standards and Technology NIST to create a mandatory documentation template for AI models. My read on this is that it acts sort of like a nutritional label for an algorithm.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, and it addresses a major structural vulnerability in how AI is currently deployed.
Because right now they're just black boxes.
Historically, yes, completely black boxes. The RE-AI Models Act requires developers to explicitly list their training data parameters,
including something they call a knowledge cutoff date.
Yes.
Let's break that down for the listener. A knowledge cutoff date means the AI is essentially frozen in time, correct? Like if an AI was trained on data up until January 2024, it literally does not know that anything happened in the world after that date.
Precisely. And think about the implications. If you are a hospital deploying an AI to assist with diagnostics, or a bank using it to assess market risk, you absolutely need to know if your algorithm is blind to the last 2 years of medical research.
Or a massive economic shift.
Right. So by forcing developers to slap that cutoff date right on the nutrition label, NIST is creating a standardized framework for accountability.
It is so fascinating to watch the legislative branch try to build guardrails for technology that evolves, by the week.
It's a huge challenge.
But if we transition over to the Energy and Commerce Committee, they are dealing with a threat that mutates even faster than software. The markups they are holding on the opioid crisis are terrifying.
They are responding to an illicit chemical market that is entirely unmoored from traditional drug trafficking.
Right. The days of just worrying about heroin imported from overseas are kind of over. We are dealing with synthetic compounds built in basement labs,
Yeah?
like H.R. 1266, the Combating Illicit Xylazine Act. This targets tranq, which is an animal tranquilizer being mixed into the fentanyl supply to extend the high.
And it causes horrifying skin necrosis.
Just awful stuff. So this bill moves xylazine to Schedule 3. Meanwhile, H.R. 7970 permanently places a class of synthetic opioids called nitazines into Schedule 1.
And the mechanism of scheduling a drug is how the federal government dictates enforcement. The distinction between those two schedules is massive.
Let's walk through that mechanism for a second. If a local police department busts a lab tomorrow, what does a Schedule I versus a Schedule 3 designation actually change on the ground?
Okay, so a Schedule I designation, which is what they're applying to nitazines, is the most restrictive category in federal law. It means the government recognizes absolutely zero accepted medical use for the substance. Moving a drug to Schedule I glory automatically triggers the most severe DEA enforcement protocols.
It establishes strict manufacturing quotas too, right?
Yes, and maximizes the criminal penalties for trafficking. Now, Schedule 3, which they are using for xylazine, acknowledges that the chemical has legitimate medical utility.
In this case, for veterinary medicine.
Right, but it has a high potential for abuse.
So it allows veterinarians to still buy it, but it creates a really stringent paper trail to prevent it from bleeding into the illicit market.
Exactly. It mandates tight inventory tracking and secure storage protocols.
But looking at this strategy, it feels like using antivirus software to patch zero-day exploits. The government schedules nitazines, so the cartels tweak one molecule in the lab and invent a brand new synthetic that just isn't on the Schedule I list yet.
It is exactly like that.
Does passing these individual bills actually change the landscape, or are we just playing legislative whack-a-mole with these synthetic opioids?
That is the defining struggle of the Energy and Commerce Committee. The legislative process is deliberately slow, while synthetic chemistry is near instantaneous.
Right.
However, that is why they are also attacking the demand and response side of the equation rather than just supply. This is where H.R. 2004 comes in, which is widely known as Tyler's Law.
This one fundamentally shifts hospital protocols, doesn't it?
It does.
It directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to issue guidance on making fentanyl testing a routine procedure in emergency departments.
Because standard drug screening panels rely on immunoassays designed to detect natural opiates.
Like morphine or heroin, which come from the poppy plant.
Exactly. But synthetic fentanyl has a completely different chemical structure.
Oh, wow. So it doesn't even show up.
Often, no. If a patient comes into the ER overdosing on a synthetic, a standard opiate screen will often come back negative, totally blinding the medical staff to what is actually happening.
That is terrifying.
It is. By updating the structural guidance for hospitals, Tyler's Law patches a massive blind spot in our triage system.
So, in the committee engine room, we see a lot of aggressive, bipartisan problem solving. But eventually, these bills have to leave committee, pass both chambers, and hit the president's desks.
Yes, they do.
And that is where this legislative X-ray shows some serious fractures. Let's look at the 21st Century Road to Housing Act.
This is a masterclass in political friction.
The consensus on this bill was just staggering. It passed the House with 358 votes, 191 Democrats, and 166 Republicans.
Incredible numbers.
It goes to the Senate and passes 85-5. The legislation tackles the housing shortage by incentivizing rapid construction, and it specifically prohibits massive institutional investors from buying up single-family starter homes with all-cash offers.
Which is what locks regular families out of the market.
Exactly. Yet despite this rare, unified congressional mandate, Representative Al Green pointed out on the floor that President Trump has simply declined to sign it.
Which brings up a fascinating constitutional mechanism. When a bill passes with those kinds of margins, the executive branch is put in a very tight corner.
I really want to understand the mechanical reality of this. It's like passing a massive group project where 90% of the class agrees on the presentation, but the teacher just folds their arms and refuses to grade it.
That's a great way to put it.
What happens mechanically if a president just ignores a bill that passed with that much support? Does it just die in a drawer?
It does not, and that is a deliberate design choice by the framers of the Constitution. They anticipated executives trying to quietly kill legislation through inaction.
So what's the workaround?
The Constitution features a built-in 10-day clock. Once a president receives a bill, he has 10 days excluding Sundays to act.
Okay.
If he does nothing while Congress is in session, the bill automatically becomes law without his signature.
So inaction is functionally acquiescence.
Yes. The alternative is a pocket veto, but that only applies if Congress adjourns during that 10-day window, preventing the return of the bill.
Got it.
Assuming Congress remains in session, the president must either let it become law silently or formally veto it and send it back with his objections.
And if he formally vetoes it, the math becomes the entire story. To override a presidential veto, Congress needs a 2/3 majority in both chambers.
Right.
Those initial vote counts, 358 in the House and 85 in the Senate, are miles above that 2/3 threshold. So structurally, Congress has the leverage, assuming those 166 Republicans don't bow to executive pressure and flip their votes during an override attempt.
It is a high-stakes constitutional standoff. And the tension between the branches isn't limited to housing. It is actively boiling over regarding the Department of Education.
Yeah, let's look at HRS 1391, which is a formal impeachment inquiry against the Secretary of Education, Linda M. McMahon.
It's quite intense.
Representatives Suzanne Bonamici and Mark Desaulniers took to the House floor to lay out severe, highly specific allegations. They claim the secretary is attempting to dismantle the department from the inside out, completely bypassing congressional authorization.
The allegations detailed in the congressional record focus heavily on executive overreach. They accuse her of terminating 1,378 career employees without cause.
That's a huge number.
Furthermore, they allege she unilaterally canceled $350 million in congressionally authorized grant funding designated for Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions.
They also claim she halted the financial disbursements for migrant education grants and federal TRIO programs.
Right.
And those are structural pipelines designed to help disadvantaged and first-generation students access higher education.
Now, we really need to pause here for a critical moment of context for you, the listener.
Absolutely. We are navigating highly charged, intensely partisan accusations from both sides of the aisle here.
Yes, we are.
Our commitment to you is complete neutrality. We are not taking a side, nor are we validating the political arguments of these representatives or the executive actions of the president.
Our sole mission is to simply crack open the congressional record and show you the exact data and factual contents your elected officials are debating on the floor.
Period. We just want you to know exactly what is going on. Now, whether we are talking about multi-billion-dollar AI initiatives, enforcing drug schedules, overhauling housing, or funding education grants, every single piece of this legislation requires capital.
It all comes back to the budget.
Always. And hovering above all of these debates is a sobering, inescapable mathematical reality about the American budget. On June 25th, Representative David Schweikert delivered a floor speech that lays out the numbers, and they are grim.
Very grim. Schweikert's presentation strips away all the political rhetoric and focuses entirely on the demographic cliff this country is walking over. He focused heavily on FICA taxes.
Let's explain FICA structurally. FICA is the payroll tax that comes out of your paycheck specifically to fund Social Security and Medicare. Right. A lot of people view Social Security like a personal savings account. You know, you put money in a vault during your career and you take your money out when you retire. But that is not how the mechanism works at all.
Not at all. It is not a vault. It is a pipeline. The taxes coming out of the paychecks of today's active workers are immediately piped out to pay the benefits of today's retirees.
It's an active transfer.
Exactly. The structural integrity of that pipeline relies entirely on a demographic ratio. You need a large number of workers funding a smaller number of retirees.
And Schweikert pointed out that this ratio has completely collapsed. In 1950, there were roughly 16 workers paying FICA taxes for every one retiree drawing benefits.
16 to 1.
Today, as the 67 million baby boomers age out of the workforce and begin drawing on the system, that ratio has plummeted to roughly 2.7 workers per retiree.
Wow.
Because of this, the FICA taxes coming in no longer cover the benefits going out.
To cover the shortfall, the system has been cashing in the Treasury bonds held in the Social Security Trust Fund. But Schweikert highlighted the terrifying timeline here.
Which is what?
That trust fund will be completely depleted in just over 6 years.
And we need to be very clear about what depletion triggers mechanically. It doesn't mean Social Security vanishes or goes bankrupt.
No, it doesn't disappear.
But by statute, the federal government is only legally allowed to pay out what it takes in. If the trust fund hits zero, the law triggers an automatic 22 to 24% cut in benefit checks across the board for every single senior.
It's a massive haircut.
Schweikert noted this would instantly double the poverty rate among the elderly.
And the Medicare side of the FICA pipeline is facing even steeper pressure. Medicare spending is projected to double from $1 trillion to $2 trillion annually over the next 6 years.
Double in 6 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Per enrollee federal spending is expected to skyrocket from $20,000 to $34,000 in just 9 budget years.
That's incredible.
And this isn't driven by a specific policy failure. It is just the raw mathematical reality of an aging population requiring higher medical utilization.
You know, Schweikert used a phrase to describe the federal government that really hit me like a ton of bricks. He called the United States an insurance company with an army.
It's a striking quote.
Is that just a catchy political slogan, or does the actual breakdown of our federal budget prove him right? When you look at the visual stack of the federal budget, that isn't a metaphor, is it?
It's not. It's a literal description of our balance sheet. If you stack federal expenditures, defense spending, the military, is only the 5th largest category.
Only the 5th.
The top of the stack is entirely consumed by Social Security, interest payments on our national debt, Medicare, and Medicaid. We spend almost all of our actual tax receipts honoring our pension and insurance obligations.
And servicing the debt we took on to pay for them before a single dollar goes to troops, bridges, or schools.
Which means we are borrowing money simply to run the rest of the country.
Now, here is where this gets incredibly compelling for you, the listener, because all of these disparate bills suddenly collide.
Yeah, they do.
We started this deep dive talking about the Science Committee pushing billions into artificial intelligence regulation. We looked at H.R. 9381, which forces the Bureau of Labor Statistics to track how AI is replacing human workers in the workplace.
And H.R. 9334, which is trying to build a framework for an AI-disrupted workforce.
Right. Policymakers are acutely aware that AI is going to fundamentally reorganize human labor.
They absolutely are.
But if we connect the dots back to FICA, we have a massive collision here. The FICA pipeline requires human payroll taxes.
Yep.
If artificial intelligence fundamentally disrupts the labor market and displaces millions of call center workers, paralegals, and coders, as these workforce bills suggest it will, how on earth does that impact the FICA revenue stream? Algorithms do not pay payroll taxes.
They do not.
If the human workforce shrinks just as the baby boomers are drawing maximum benefits, doesn't that accelerate the trust fund depletion timeline Schweikert is so terrified of?
You are describing the defining economic tension of this decade. Lawmakers are racing against 2 entirely different clocks right now.
The demographic clock.
Exactly. The demographic clock's ticking down to the trust fund depletion in 6 years. But the technological clock of AI is moving at lightning speed, threatening to erode the very tax base required to keep the demographic clock from exploding.
It's a perfect storm.
If AI creates massive efficiency but hollows out the middle-class payroll, the FICA math collapses much faster than 6 years.
But Congress is trying to pull levers to manipulate that math, specifically on the cost side. If they can't stop the demographic wave, they're trying to lower the financial ceiling of healthcare before the wave hits.
That is exactly what the transparency bills are attempting to do. Like H.R. 9390, the Prices on the Wall Act.
Right, fighting healthcare costs.
It strips away the opaque pricing models of hospitals. It legally mandates that facilities post their actual discounted cash prices by 2028. Additionally, H.R. 5243 forces enrollee-level data transparency for Medicare Advantage plans.
Exposing the cash prices is basically an attempt to create a localized, functional, free market. I mean, if you can actually see that an MRI costs $400 at the clinic across the street, but $1,200 at the hospital, you'll obviously go to the clinic. Congress is hoping that injecting this radical transparency will force competition, driving down the underlying cost of medical care and relieving some of that immense $2 trillion pressure on the Medicare budget.
They're trying to use market transparency and technological guardrails to outrun demographic destiny.
And that brings us full circle. The legislative X-ray isn't broken. It's incredibly complex and occasionally contradictory, But the machinery is running hot.
Oh, very hot.
While the news cameras focus on the yelling, your representatives are actively wrestling with the solvency of the national safety net, the structural regulation of synthetic drug markets, and the preservation of human labor in the face of artificial intelligence.
The stakes are existential, and the volume of legislation attempting to address them is immense.
Which brings us directly back to you, the listener. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, and we hope this deep dive gave you a much clearer picture of how these policies actually function.
It's a lot to take in, but it's important.
It really is. And if you find value in this kind of context-driven, mechanism-focused civic education, please take a moment to hit that Buy Me a Coffee link in your episode description. It truly is what keeps this independent, ad-free resource sustainable.
But more importantly, we want you to engage with this material yourself.
Absolutely.
Go to congress.gov. You can search for HR 2478, the AI initiatives, or the Tyler's Law protocols we discussed. Look at the actual text. See how the laws are constructed.
Find your local representative's contact info, call their offices, ask them on the record how they plan to address the FICA shortfall or the regulation of synthetic opioids.
Keep an eye on upcoming committee hearings, too. You can watch a live Science or Energy Committee hearing online right from your living room.
That is the actual heartbeat of your democracy. It's your government, and understanding how it works is the first step to holding it accountable. To wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over.
What's that?
We spent a lot of time today analyzing how Congress is rushing to put guardrails on artificial intelligence before it disrupts the human workforce. But considering the thousands of pages of dense legalese, the complex jurisdictional data, and the sheer volume of bills required to run a nation, if generative AI is already writing complex software code and passing bar exams, how long until we see the very first piece of federal legislation drafted entirely by an algorithm?
And the real question is, will Congress even notice?
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.